Aladdin stood alone in the vast, endless desert, the scorching sun beating down upon him. The golden palace that had once been his home was gone, vanished in the blink of an eye. The cool fountains, the lush gardens, the grand halls filled with treasures, all of it had disappeared. Worst of all, Princess Jasmine had been taken, and he had no idea where she was. His heart pounded with fear, but he refused to let despair consume him. He had lost everything once before and had risen from nothing. He would do it again. Determined, he began walking, his mind racing for a plan. He had no lamp, no genie, and no riches, but he had his courage and his wit. He had to find out where the sorcerer had taken Jasmine and the palace. As he trudged through the desert, the wind howled around him, whipping sand into his face. His throat was dry, and his legs ached, but he pushed forward, driven by the thought of rescuing Jasmine. After what felt like an eternity, he spotted a small village in the distance. Hope flickered in his heart. If he could find food, water, and information, he might stand a chance. Staggering into the village, he approached an elderly man sitting under the shade of a palm tree. "Please, sir," Aladdin said, his voice hoarse from thirst. "Have you heard of a magnificent palace that suddenly appeared out of nowhere?" The old man stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Indeed, I have," he said. "A few nights ago, a palace unlike any other rose from the earth in the Far East, deep within the mountains. The people speak of a powerful sorcerer who now rules over it." Aladdin's heart sank. He had been right, the sorcerer had taken everything. But knowing where Jasmine was gave him strength. He thanked the old man, drank some water, and gathered his strength for the long journey ahead. Determined to reclaim what was his, Aladdin pressed on, traveling across the scorching deserts and rugged mountains. The journey was treacherous, he faced harsh storms, wild beasts, and exhaustion. But his love for Jasmine and his desire for justice fueled him. After days of relentless travel, he finally reached the hidden palace. From a distance, he saw its towering golden walls and high balconies, just as they had been before. But now, the place was surrounded by guards dressed in dark robes, their faces stern and watchful. Aladdin crouched behind a cluster of rocks, observing carefully. Getting inside would not be easy. He had no magic, no army, and no weapons. But he had his intelligence. He needed a disguise. Nearby, he spotted a peddler carrying a heavy basket filled with fruits and spices toward the palace gates. A plan formed in Aladdin's mind. Moving swiftly, he approached the man and offered to help carry the basket. Grateful for the assistance, the peddler allowed him to walk alongside him toward the palace. As they neared the gates, Aladdin kept his head low, hiding beneath the basket's weight. The guards barely glanced at him as they let the peddler through. Once inside, Aladdin slipped away unnoticed and hid behind a grand column. His heart pounded as he made his way through the familiar halls, careful to avoid the guards. He had to find Jasmine. Then, from one of the balconies, he heard a soft voice singing, a voice he knew better than his own. "Jasmine." Following the sound, he reached a grand chamber where Jasmine sat by the window, her face sorrowful. She was dressed in fine silks, but there was no joy in her eyes. The sorcerer had taken her as a prisoner. Aladdin rushed forward, whispering her name. She turned, and her eyes widened in shock and relief. "Aladdin," she gasped. "Shoo," he said, placing a finger to his lips. "I've come to take you home." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. "The sorcerer has the lamp. He uses it to control the genie." Aladdin clenched his fists. He had expected this. "Where does he keep it?" "In the grand hall, on a pedestal," Jasmine whispered. "But it is always guarded." Aladdin's mind raced. He needed to get the lamp back. Without it, defeating the sorcerer would be impossible. But he had one chance, a trick that could turn the tables in his favor. "Trust me," he told Jasmine. "We're getting out of here." As footsteps echoed down the hallway, he knew time was running out. He had to act fast, and the fate of everything depended on his next move.